Comfortable Universe with Dr. Pete, yours truly. We're going to talk a little bit about just really the basics and what our comfortable universe, our song of everything ideas are trying to get at. That is different, really different from pretty much all the discourse, all the talk that's going around today. It's focused on science, but it's going to be much different kind of focus than you will find in science. Because what we're focusing on is a bigger picture, and some of the things that are kind of kept quiet, not deliberately, but because it's not for scientists, it's not a positive thing to talk about. And that is what science can't figure out, what science doesn't know, what maybe not even it's possible to know. When we come to pause, what science knows is just revolutionary. I mean, you can't deny it, you can't, I'm not a basher of science at all. What we have is a limited frame of stuff, and what science works on in that limited frame, it's been doing a fantastic job. What our Song of Everything is trying to do is look at what's beyond those fringes, what science kind of can't or doesn't want to or just hasn't yet looked into. Clues gathered not just from what science has found, but from taking the bigger picture of how what science hasn't discovered figures in and why it might be really important as a clue. We didn't learn this because blah blah blah, because there's some secret hidden clue there that may give us some further information, some further insight into what the world is like. So we're going to talk about just a couple of simple things. First of all, what we take on faith. Now, one of the foundational things that I'm going to claim is that we take everything on faith. It's called the mind-body problem, and it's, like we're all trapped in our little minds, in our own individual minds. It's the only perspective that each individual thinking person, scientist or not, has. We take on faith that this physical world is real, is physical. And of course, it's a pretty good assumption. All the other assumptions just kind of, just don't have as much coherence or make as much sense. The world is really here, but the only way we can perceive it is through our own minds, through the filter of what our brains can do with it. So that's, science has to take that on faith. Now, let's talk about just some of the most fundamental things that science, physics particularly, is trying to study. Trying to study smallest things, the particles, individual, fundamental, basic particles. There's basically 17 of them. And they are all sitting awash in something even more fundamental, and that is a vacuum, the vacuum. And vacuum is not empty space. Now I'm going to take on faith that there's something called the vacuum, the big V vacuum, that does not apply to our particular universe, but is sort of like beyond or outside, and I've talked about it before, it's the ineffable, the Tao, the thing that you can't really describe adequately because it can't actually exist. It's sort of nothing. I call it the poster boy for nothing because it can't be absolute nothing. Absolute nothing, as I've also said before, doesn't allow for anything else, for something. It's just blankness. Okay, so we take on faith that the vacuum somehow precedes or encompasses everything we observe. And of course, you know, science, you can make a vacuum wherever you want. Anywhere in the world you go, you can try and create a vacuum by taking everything away from a particular space. And we found out that even when we try to do that, what's left is something unsettled, something not particularly totally empty and quiet. Well, that's the basis for how our universe might have formed if our universe actually had a start. And again, that is my approach to the Song of Everything approach to how our universe got started. It got started out of this primordial, like pre-existing, but there's no time involved. It doesn't, the vacuum doesn't have time, doesn't have space. These things all emerged from it as part of our universe. It doesn't have any rules, including the rule that there are no rules. It's a total paradox. Can't, no matter how many hours I spend trying to talk about it, describe it, you can't. It's not really there, but it's there, and it's the most important thing, and yet it doesn't exist. So cool. I think that's just so cool. And science does not talk about it in that way. It's beyond science. It's not physical, and science tries to pretty much limit itself to what's physical. So let's just look real quick. I don't want to make this too long of a video, but let's just look at what appears in the vacuum. When we try to look at the state of quantum fields that are floating around in the vacuum, and they are like in all space everywhere that we can observe, we focus in on a thing that we will define as a particle, let's say an electron. What is the particle actually? No, that's not the question. We focus on a particle, focus on a particle like, say, the electron, and try to focus in on it and try and figure out what it's made of, what it really looks like in as much detail as you can. So science has created these massive particle accelerators that take particles and bang them into each other at super high speed, almost the speed of light, create explosions of other particles when they bang into each other, and try and study that extreme high energy state to try to focus in on what the electron looks like, or what a particle actually looks like, how it actually behaves. And when you do that, the closer you look, the more energy you need to inject into it. Pretty soon, you would have to take the energy of the entire universe and inject it into a particle accelerator to try to get close to perfect look at the electron, and you're still not there. And then you come into this, you run into this law that's called, well, we'll call it the Planck scale. Once you've understood general relativity, you can see that there is a minimum scale, and combining with particle physics, that there's a minimum scale that you can look at, below which you have to concentrate the energy so much that it creates a black hole. And, you know, everything gets swallowed up in the black hole, and you can't get the information back out, and you're lost. So what you got there is some kind of a limit. Total you can't disobey at a limit on the smallest thing. It's called the Planck scale. And when the smallest, when you try to study anything smaller than the smallest thing, it just does not make sense in terms of general relativity, quantum mechanics, and the science, physics that has been discovered. But what is that? That is, the science and physics has discovered these laws, these rules, that say that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, that you cannot look at something smaller than the Planck length because of the energy you need to put into it. But energy is just also stuff that we study as part of our universe. The song of everything idea is that these are censorships. These are things that are limiting our thinking, limiting what we're trying to examine and study, but they're not general. They're not absolute. Well, nothing is absolute, so I don't want to use that term. They're not general. They're not things that the overall realm of existence is requiring of us, that the vacuum is requiring to come out of it, to start a universe. We started a universe with these laws, quantum mechanics, general relativity. We could have started it with something else, perhaps with a thing that has a faster speed limit. And in fact, we have a thing that goes faster than the speed of light, and that's the inflation that started the universe from a single particle, we claim, to the whole universe that we see. It expands the universe way faster than the speed of light, and that's critical. When you look down at those smallest particles, you're limited by gravity, which is one of the laws that came out as this universe got created. But it could have been something else that maybe could allow you to look farther down into smaller and smaller scales. So out there in the vacuum, those smaller scales are not necessarily truly censored away from our thinking and our conceptualization of what the biggest picture might be all about. Okay, I'm sure I've run this video way too long. I kind of rambled, and I'll be editing some of it out to make it a little bit cleaned up if I can. But in the meantime, comfortable universe, start thinking about what's behind the curtain. Start thinking about, if you're looking at the solid floor that you're walking on, start looking at the cracks and see what's beneath the floor, what's falling through the cracks. That way of thinking, I think, can be extremely productive, and I think you'll find that it's come to some pretty interesting results. And that's where we're going with this song of everything, and hopefully I won't kick the bucket before I get a chance to explain some of it. That's all for now. Dr. Pete here at the Cloister at Three Creeks in the comfortable universe. Take care. Bye-bye.